Hello, and welcome to God I Hear You with Renee Saunders. Today's topic is courage. And I know you're probably thinking, Renee, we just talked about bold and being bold last week. So why are we talking about courage? Is it the same thing? And I want to break down to you a little bit the difference on boldness versus courage. So, boldness is described as impulsive and in the moment, versus courage is described as prudent and prepared, carefully planned. And the actual definition of courage is defined as strength in the face of pain or grief. So, something happened, y'all, and I'm gonna just get you in my business a little bit. So, from when I was younger, I had spiritual senses in terms of I was a feeler. I'm still a feeler. So I can feel when someone maybe depressed, or I can feel people's energy. And it helps me discern on how to talk to them. And so a lot of people would say to me, like, how'd you know? Like, because I'd be like, are you okay? And they'd be like, oh, I'm fine. And I'd be like, are you okay? And then usually it goes into, no, I'm not okay. So I've always been a feeler. And I remember a time when I was very, very young. This time we were actually living in Hartford, Connecticut. So we were on Westland. So for those that know, they know. So I was living on Westland. I was really, really young. So this was definitely under fourth grade. And I remember being in the room that my family prayed in. So we had a specific family room. We really didn't go in that room unless we were um, either in family worship or just sitting and talking with each other. We utilized the kitchen more to like watch entertainment and stuff like that. So that room was really dedicated to worship and prayer. And I remember sitting there as a child and seeing an image, and the image was wolf like. And it looked like a man, like a physical man, but the face was a wolf. And me being a child, I'm like, oh no, the big bad wolf lives in my house. Like this is not good. This is scary. So I was like super afraid of going in that room in the back without like anyone. And I kept it to myself, like, oh my gosh, the big bad wolf. Because I had the childlike innocence thinking, like, Santa Claus is still real. So if Santa Claus is real, then of course this thing is real. You know what I mean? So I was really, really afraid. But one thing I did realize in my adult life was that as much as I saw that image, it was very real, but it was real in the spiritual realm. It could not cross the, so there was a door, and it was a clear door. So it was more like you can see out into the porch. So it was like this image was like on the porch, and it could not cross over to where my family would pray and worship. And I didn't really realize that until my adult life. But to kind of tell you a little bit more, is I was literally deathly afraid, like scared about seeing that image again. And I remember as I grew up, I would pray, like, God, protect me from, the evil and in the spiritual realm. I don't want no parts in it. And even as I got older, there would be moments when I was sleeping where I would feel a negative energy, like, on me, trying to attack me during my sleep. And I'm like, God, you built certain soldiers for certain things, but take me out the game. I don't need to, you don't need to recruit me for this. And I really feel like God be looking at me like, girl, please, I'm gonna do what I want to do with you, and you're gonna be ready when the time is ready. But literally there was a long moment in which like I felt like he shut my eyes, and I was so thankful because, oh child, I was thankful. But like during the moments where I wasn't seeing anything, I would still feel stuff. But my brother, he was all up in the seeing and the feeling and the knowing. And he'd just be like, oh, okay, you ready to nut? Because I'm ready to buck. He has the temperament of like, he talks about it with like so ease. Like, it's like, yeah, so I was at KFC and I was talking to this lady and I just saw the spirit next to her. And I'm like, wait a minute, what? And I'm like, God, I see what you're doing for others. Just know you ain't got to do that for me. I'm good with seeing in the earthly realm. And so I really want you guys to know that the spiritual realm is real. So you have to stay prayed up. You have to stay vigilant. You have to stay rooted in God. And if you're not rooted in God, this is what I'm here for. I'm here to tell you, I'm here to encourage you to be rooted in God. But the reason why I bring all this up is because, this is a vulnerable journey for me. And it takes courage to really put yourself out there in the face of pain, grief, whatever I'm going through. I still am choosing to listen to God's call on my life. And that is challenging. So I recorded accepting the call. I recorded being bold, right? And after I recorded being bold, I remember I felt so good, so good. And it's almost like I felt like a rush of like, God is good and ooh, 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 ooh. And then I remember going into my room to like, upload the video. Because what I do is after I record, I upload the video to all the platforms just to download it and everything. And I remember going in there and I felt like an uneasy feeling. And it started off small. It started off uneasy. And I'm like, I really should be praying. Like something, I had a feeling something was coming. And so I was just in that mode of like getting stuff done. And it still was like feeling that way. So I prayed, of course, before I went to sleep, but I still felt like an eerie, uneasy feeling. And when I went to sleep that night, I did not sleep good. Okay. I was interrupted 3 times. So the first time I was interrupted, it was dreamlike. And when you're dreaming something that makes you uncomfortable, sometimes it could wake you up. So first time I'm dreaming, and the dream is my mom runs into my room and she jumps in my bed and she's like scared. And I'm like, what's going on? Like, what's up, Ma? And she was like, I'm scared. You got to pray. And I'm like, okay, I'm praying. So because I woke up to, that startle, I did start praying because I'm like, that's weird. Let me pray over my mom. Let me pray over me. That's weird. So I prayed. I went back to sleep. I wake up again because I was woken up by a second dream. And the second dream is I'm with my friend and I go to my friend and I'm like, hey, we got to pray. And she was like, okay, come to the car. We're going to pray right now. We go over to her car. Once we get to her car, we see our other friend. And that friend is like belligerently drunk. So completely distracted us from praying because now we're trying to take care of her. And I'm like, what kind of dreams is these? Like first that, then this. And this is like every time I'm going back to sleep, I'm having a dream. So the third time, the third time, I feel like I was awake. I can't confirm. I feel like I was awake. And then I literally looked to, now I was definitely awake at this point. I looked to the left of me and I saw a black spirit, clearly an unclean spirit, because that spirit made the whole room feel scary and eerie. And I'm like, oh, Lord. The first thing I'm like, Lord, we talked about this. I told you I ain't want to see in the spiritual realm. So what buddy doing over here? I don't want him here. He is not welcome here. He or she, whatever, not welcome here. And literally I saw it. And as soon as I looked over to the head of my bed, literally it grabbed my 2 feet and was like trying to push something, like it felt like more like a power, like a negative power into my foot. And my body was resisting it. And as I'm resisting it, I'm screaming or trying to scream, Jesus, 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 Jesus. That's all I could say. And it didn't last long, but then it snapped off and everything snapped away. But this point, that will wake you up. Okay. At this point, I ain't gonna go back to sleep at this point. So I'm fully awake and I'm like, God, why? Why? I am not my brother. I don't have the same temperament to deal with stuff like that. I don't like that stuff. Why did you allow that to happen? And I'm literally sitting down and I'm praying because I could still feel the room it's not peaceful yet. And so it's early. And mind you, this is like maybe 3:42 in the morning that this is happening. So now I'm up and I got work the next day. I'm tired, right? So I'm up. I feel uneasy. I can't sleep. And around 5 something, I text Keen, my friend, just about something completely different. And then she texted back in a minute. So I was like, oh, she up. So she like, girl, what you doing up? Because if you texted me 5 o'clock East Coast time, it must be like 4 something your time. So she's my spiritual sister. So it's so crazy that she happened to be awake. And I told her, I said, girl, something happened. I just got attacked. And she was like, wait a minute, I'm gonna call you. I call her and I tell her what happened. And she prayed for me on FaceTime. And when I tell you, I could feel the atmosphere shift back into place. And so I was so thankful for that. And we ended up getting off the phone. I was trying to go back to sleep, but I felt fear. I was really feeling fear. Like if I go back to sleep, it was going to be a part 4 sequel to that. So there's just a lot going on. So I didn't really sleep. I probably slept for like maybe 30 minutes and I had to get up and get right into the workday. And maybe around 8 o'clock, I text my brother. I usually text him about every inconvenience that I have. And so I text my brother. And I'm like, Kyle, something happened. I told him, this man gonna say, I'll call you after work. You see his temperament? He too chill for me. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, call me right now. So he's like, I'll call you after work. So lo and behold, he gives me a call after work. And when I tell you, God is good. God is so good. So he calls me after work and he was like, so sis, I saw your text and everything makes sense now. He was like, so I was in my room and he was like, I felt an unclean spirit coming close to me. And he was like, but I knew it's like God was telling me. And he was like, God told him, this spirit is going to go attack your mom and your sister. So I need you to pray. So he's praying in the spirit. So when someone says praying in the spirit, that means more than likely they're just praying. They're not praying out loud. They're praying in the spirit. Some people say, they speaking in tongues, whatever, that's different. But my brother, he prays a lot in the spirit. So silently. So he's praying. So he said, but this happened very early in the morning. I said, wow. So the same time he's praying, this thing is coming my way. And I feel like now that I look back, the dreams that I were having, my mom running into my room saying she's scared and we need to pray, me seeing my friend saying we need to pray, it was God trying to wake me up like, girl, I know you like your sleep, love my sleep, but you need to get up and pray. And so I say all that to say is that when God is trying to protect you, he's trying to warn you about something, he will use different methods of communication. He will use someone praying on the East Coast. He done woke Keen up for me. He woke my brother up to warn me of that. And I know that, I'm protected. I know I'm covered. And I shared with my brother, I was like, Kyle, like when it happened and I was able to see, this was the first time that I've seen something like that since I was under fourth grade. So it's been a long time. And I was like, I'm not the same soldier as you. And he said, Renee, I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say that. But I feel like where God is calling you, you are probably going to see and hear and whatever more. He was like, so don't block off what God is trying to do, because what he's doing in your life can be a testimony for other people. And I said, you are right. I said, but even though you're right, I'm still scared. And he said something to me that really stuck. He said, don't be discouraged, but be encouraged. Because he said, what happened in the spiritual realm is, you see, Renee, when you decided to accept the call and be bold on your life with this podcast, the enemy is upset. And he saw that there was a seal, a covering over your life that was literally lifted. And so now you are an impact in the spiritual realm. You will bring and call people to Christ. So this was a method to try to discourage you, try to put fear in you, and you cannot succumb to it. And when he said that, I said, my God, that's exactly how I was feeling. And so it's so important to talk about what you're going through. Don't keep things to yourself. If you need to reach out to someone that's spiritual, a pastor, whatever, talk about these things, because that's how you encourage yourself. Don't self-seclude. That's what the enemy wants. And that day, I still felt like, a little like, oh, like what's going on? I'm vulnerable. I'm scared. And I'm like, God, all I want to do is listen to you. But geez, you gotta come. It comes with all of this. And I know it does. But I really just need courage. I need the strength to face the pain, the adversity in that moment. I need it. And literally, as I'm sitting on the couch, I'm like, I recorded accepting the call, which is A. I recorded being bold, which is B. And I recorded debilitating doubt, which is going to come out after this video, D. And I'm going to talk about that soon on what I'm, the alphabet. I'm like, God, I had a couple topics for C, but I wasn't sure. And literally when I opened my Bible app after this day, because I felt like it was courage, but I was like, but courage is very close to boldness, So I'm like, do I really want to talk about that back to back? But I felt like he allowed that to happen because he really wanted me to speak on courage and for you guys to understand the difference of courage. And so when I opened my Bible app, I've never even seen this come up before. A notification popped up in the Bible app. That ain't never happened to me. I don't know, I don't be updating my phone, and it literally said, it had Daniel, right? And we're going to get into that. It had Daniel. And to me, that was who I would associate with having courage. And so it was like the confirmation I needed. And so I was like, okay, so it's going to be courage. I'm going to talk about courage and having courage. But also, what was really, really crazy is that I just had this feeling to get up and record. And so I was like, wait a minute. And that, mind you, that same morning, I got attacked. I saw what, all that happened. And I ended up recording Debilitating Doubt. And when I recorded Debilitating Doubt, which will come out next week, well, in 2 weeks, after I recorded it, I felt the presence of God just like disperse energy in me and give me like power. And I needed it. It was like he sent, or himself, he just gave me the power I needed, because as I was recording, I was scared. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm scared. And I'm recording through fear, but that takes courage. So that's what we're talking about today. I had to talk a little bit about me. and everything like that. But we're going to talk a little into the book of Daniel. And the book of Daniel, you know how I said Luke was my favorite chapter? Daniel's pretty up there. So the book of Daniel really highlights Daniel's like visions of the end of times to come. But it also really highlights what it means to have courage. And I know for my Bible scholars, y'all gonna probably get on me a little bit about this, but I had no idea that Daniel knew Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So to give y'all a summary for those that don't know, Daniel is the individual that stood in the lion's den, was thrown in the lion's den. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were the three individuals that were thrown into the fiery furnace. So if those stories like correlated all to you, that's from the book of Daniel. It's not a big chapter. It's only like 12 books. So highly recommend you read Daniel, the book of Daniel. So to give you a little summary, what happened was there was a king named Jehoiakim who reigned over Judah for 3 years. And then King Nebuchadnezzar, who was the king of Babylon, came over, literally wiped the kingdom away from King Jehoiakim. And King Jehoiakim was known to be very, very evil. So he only had a 3-year reign, very evil. And when King Nebuchadnezzar came into authority over that territory, he did a very smart move. He requested that the master of the eunuchs go out into the community of what he just took over and find wise men, find men without blemish, find men that had knowledge. And what's key is to know that Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were among the men that were selected as wise men. So these individuals were brought into the house of the king to serve the king. And so what we're going to do is we're going to have a little bit of verses. You remember how during COVID, we were all tuned in. We had our Ashanti verse Keisha Cole. That was my favorite one. We had our whole setups and everything. So what we're going to do is really look at courage versus adversity, courage versus haters. And we're really just going to, see who's winning. Let's see who's going to win. So first, we're going to look at courage versus adversity. And to connect Daniel to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, yes, they were all selected, but they do have direct connections with each other. So there was a moment where King Nebuchadnezzar had a dream, and he had a dream that was very troubling. He couldn't sleep. And when he woke up, he reached out to all the head honchos. He's like, bring the sorcerers, bring the magicians, bring the wise men, and let them tell me my dream and also the interpretation of the dream. And he was getting a lot of pushback. They were like, no, you have to tell us the dream in order for us to give you the interpretation. But a couple things you should know about King Nebuchadnezzar was he was not the one to play with. When he said something, he meant it. And I don't want to use the N word, narcissist, but he kind of had some narcissist characteristics. So he pretty much said to them, if you're not able to tell me the dream and the interpretation, I'm cutting you into pieces. Your house going to be made of ashes. He going to that far extreme. So pretty much tell me everything or death is the only option. So at this point, the magicians, the sorcerers, they ain't going to be able to tell him it. No. So, because the thing is, the dream came from God. So when you are in, the dark side of things, you're not going to be able to tell a dream from God. So literally, King Nebuchadnezzar is mad. So he requests that all the wise men would be slaughtered. And if that is the case, that would mean that Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego would also be a part of the group that was slaughtered. So Daniel decided amongst the group, he didn't even consult Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He said, you know what? I'm going to go to the king and see what I could do. So he goes to King Nebuchadnezzar and he's like, look, give me some time and I'm going to get right back to you. King Nebuchadnezzar, surprisingly, because with his temperament, you just don't know, surprisingly gave Daniel the okay. And then at that point, Daniel went and told Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, like, hey, look, I went to the king. Let's just seek God. So he had them in prayer mode and he was in prayer mode. And of course, God revealed to Daniel the dream. And when he went back to the king, because of his courage and because of, God blessing him, King Nebuchadnezzar also blessed him and was like, promoted him within the kingdom. And Daniel said, not only me, bring my boys, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So I just wanted you to kind of know sort of the dynamic between this group. And I did not make the correlation before, but that was so key for you to know. So we're going to look at courage versus adversity. And this is actually regarding Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So we're in chapter 3. And Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold whose height was 6 cubits and its width was 6 cubits. He set it up in the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. And King Nebuchadnezzar sent word to gather together the satraps, the administrators, the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the judges, and the magistrates, and all the official of the province to come to the dedication of the image which King Nebuchadnezzar set up. So pretty much he made a statue of himself and he wanted everybody to come see it. Then a herald cried aloud, "To you it is commanded, O people, nations, and languages, that at the time you hear the sound of the horn, flute, harp, lyre, and psaltery in symphony with all kinds of music, you shall fall down and worship the gold image that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast immediately into the midst of a burning fiery furnace." So you see what I said when I said King Nebuchadnezzar was a little bit of a narcissist. But anywho, at this point, that's the law now. When you hear the music, you got to bow down and worship. So, of course, let's see what happens. There were certain Jews whom you have, and so, okay, let me pause here actually. So, long story short, this law is into place. You have Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego that are the Jews who pretty much said, yeah, I know you said that, but we only worship one God. The one true God is who we worship, so we're not going to do that. So, of course, adversity. This is adversity. What are they going to do in this moment? Like, the law is that if you don't worship, you're going to be sent into the burning furnace. And they're still choosing not to do it. So this is what happened next. So this is what gets reported to King Nebuchadnezzar. So King Nebuchadnezzar hears word. There are certain Jews whom you have set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not paid due regard to you. They do not serve your gods or worship the gold image which you have set up. Then Nebuchadnezzar, in rage and fury, gave the command to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So they brought these men before the king. And Nebuchadnezzar spoke, saying to them, "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the gold image which I have set up? Now, if you are ready, at the time you hear the sound of the horn, flute, harp, lyre, and psaltery in symphony with all kinds of music, and you fall down and worship the image which I have made good. But if you do not worship, you shall be immediately cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. And who is the God who will deliver you from my hands?" So let's sit here for a second. King Nebuchadnezzar was so beside himself that he heard that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were not bowing down and worshiping his image that he said, let's regroup. So he calls them in and he's trying to give them one more chance to do what he wants them to do. And I'm like, okay, this is a lot. We are talking about adversity in the face of death. And they have to pick what's going to happen. So this is what Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego say. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter." If that is the case, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us from your hand, O king. But if not, let it be known to you, O king, that we do not serve the gods, nor will we worship the gold image which you have set up. So they're pretty much saying, look, we ain't going to do it. And on top of us not doing it, we trust that God will set us free. But even if he doesn't, we still only honor and worship him. Now that is courage. They knew the law. They knew what was set in place. They knew the consequences and still chose to stand on business for God. Courage in the face of adversity. Courage in the face of, I ain't ready to die. So I know that they had fear. I know that they were like, "Oh Lord, we don't want to do this, but we have to do this. We have to have courage." So this is how Nebuchadnezzar responds. Then Nebuchadnezzar was full of fury, and the expression on his face changed towards Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He spoke and commanded that they heat the furnace 7 times more than it is usually heated. And he commanded certain mighty men of valor who were in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and cast them into the burning fiery furnace. Then these men were bound in their coats, their trousers, their turbans, and their other garments, and were cast in the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Therefore, because the king's command was urgent, listen to this, and the furnace exceedingly hot, the flame of the fire killed those men who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So the people that put them in there died. And these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down, bound in the midst of the burning fiery furnace. So King Nebuchadnezzar, he was a lot. This is a lot. You this mad that someone's not worshiping you, that you throw them in a fiery furnace? But we have to be vigilant. We have to be vigilant of the true meaning of everything that's going on. So let me tell you what happens. Then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished, and he rose in haste and spoke, saying to the counselors, "Did we not cast 3 men bound in the midst of the fire?" And they answered and said to the king, "True, true." And so King Nebuchadnezzar says, "Well, look, I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt. And the form of the 4th is like the Son of God." So Jesus showed up in the furnace. Jesus saw the courage of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And not only, he could have just protected them. He could have just let them not be burned. But he said, no, I'm going to show up. I'm going to show up because I want to show that through your courage, my glory is showing. And it's so crazy because King Nebuchadnezzar does not worship the same God as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But you will find that the true God, which is the God we serve, the God that we serve, even when someone doesn't believe or worship, when God makes a way to show his glory, even they will have to say it. Even they will see it and they will acknowledge. So King Nebuchadnezzar acknowledged, he said, and the form of the 4th is like the Son of God. He was able to see God's glory. And so to talk about the courage on this, they were prepared for whatever God had planned for them. And it did not alter their opinion whether God rescued them or not, because they knew that it takes courage to stand up for what you believe in the face of death and fear. But even if God didn't pull up for them, their faith, their courage was still not going to change. When I tell y'all, that's deep. That's deep. Wow. The last point I want to talk about is courage versus haters. So we just talked about courage versus adversity. We already know that courage stood on business. Courage won that versus round. Let's look at courage versus haters. So this is specific to Daniel. So at this point, King Nebuchadnezzar is no longer the king. This is chapter 6. We now have King Darius. Now, King Darius actually really loved Daniel. Because Daniel found favor. And so because Daniel found favor is kind of the reason why we're going to talk about courage versus haters. Because of Daniel's favor, it came with a lot of haters. It came with a lot of, negativity. So here's what it says. It pleased Darius to set over the kingdom 120 satraps to be over the whole kingdom, and over these 3 governors, of whom Daniel was one. So Daniel was a governor. And the satraps might give account to them so that the king would suffer no loss. Then this Daniel distinguished himself above the governors and satraps because an excellent spirit was in him, and the king gave thought to setting him over the whole realm. So the governors and the satraps sought to find some charge against Daniel concerning the kingdom, but they could not find no charge or fault, because he was faithful, nor were there any error or fault found in him. Then these men said, "We shall not find any charge against Daniel unless we find it against him concerning the law of God." You know how trifling you gotta be to try to go seek and find fault in someone? And to make it even worse, you we can't find no fault, so we're gonna have to find it in the law of his God. And I'm like, okay, take a look at yourself. There's moments where you have done absolutely nothing to no one, and they just don't like you for no reason. They're trying to find something. They're trying to nitpick. They're trying to, oh, I don't like her because of this. Oh, I don't know why I don't like her, but it's just something about her. You ever hear people say stuff like that? And what it is you have something that is probably disturbing the negative, unclean spirits within them. And so Daniel didn't do nothing to nobody, was minding his business. And here these people are upset at the favor, upset that King Darius is looking at him to put him over a whole region, a whole realm. So what did these people do? So what they did was they pretty much assembled and they made this whole law saying that for the next 30 days, which was so bizarre, the next 30 days, no one could worship anyone but King Darius, right? So some things to know about Daniel was, obviously, throughout this whole book of Daniel, he was always honoring and worshiping God. So they knew that. So they had to find a loophole to try to get him to slip up, right? Because they were trying to kill him. So pretty much the rule was that if you worshiped anything else outside of King Darius for the next 30 days, you would be thrown into the lion's den. Oh, I'm so happy these same laws don't exist but in some places they do. If you worship God, you're being slaughtered. And so actually, these things are still happening in different ways. So let me tell you about Daniel. If I don't care was a person, well, he probably did care, because this was definitely courage. Now, when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went home, and in his upper room, with his windows open towards Jerusalem, he knelt down on his knees 3 times that day and prayed and gave thanks before his God, as was his custom since earlier days. So Daniel, not only did he pray, but he went in his upper room, windows open, facing Jerusalem, so people could see him, knelt down on his knees and prayed 3 times a day. He did not alter what he did with God to please men. That takes courage. Courage in the face of death, courage in the face of fear, courage in the face of adversity, courage in the face of haters. That takes a lot, because if it were someone else and you knew that was the law, someone else could have just said, you know what? I'm just going to pray in my prayer closet. I'm just going to pray in hiding, right? Because you could pray in the spirit. But Daniel said, no, I'm not going to shift what I was doing. Me and God have our relationship. So whatever happens, happens. But I'm not going to hide my love for God. I'm going to choose courage. And so, of course, these men was peeping the scene. Then these men assembled and found Daniel praying and making supplication before his God. And they went before the king and spoke concerning the king's decree. This is what I'm saying to the king. Have you not signed a decree that every man who petitions any god or man within 30 days except you, O king, shall be cast into the den of the lions? The king answered and said, the thing is true. According to the law of Medes and the Persians, which does not alter, it's true. So they said they don't understand too. Not only are they setting up Daniel, they're setting up the king, because they know the king loves him some Daniel. That's his dude. That, like, they locked in. So they're setting it up to a point where the king literally can't recant on the law or what he said, you know? So they're essentially trying to trap both of them. So this is what they said. So they answered and said before the king, that Daniel is he one of the captives from Judah, does not show due regard for you, O king, for the decree that you have signed, but makes his petition 3 times a day. So now they're snitching, right? They snitching. And at this point, not only are they, you got to really hate someone to wish them to be thrown into a lion's den. So they're telling the king, okay, well, Daniel, he one of the captives that, was, exalted to be a governor. He don't respect you. He don't respect the decree you sign. And he makes petitions to his God 3 times a day. So at this point, King Darius knows what's up. He like, okay, how can I get out of this one? He knows he can't say, okay, I favor Daniel, so the law doesn't apply to him. He knows as a king, he has to stand on business. What's for one has to be for all. So King Darius is hurt by this decision, but he has to go forward with the decision because it's the law. So the king gave the command, and they brought Daniel and cast him into the den of the lions. But the king spoke, saying to Daniel, and this is what I'm trying to say. Oh, this brings me chills. Your God, whom you serve continually, he will deliver you. King Darius, that does not worship the same God. This just happened with Daniel, with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. King Nebuchadnezzar did not worship their gods, but they still saw the glory of their God. And so he's telling him this as he's in the lion's den, like, your God whom you serve continually, he will deliver you. Whew, that's powerful. So that night, King Darius, he couldn't sleep because that's his boy. He couldn't sleep. He stayed up, and the first thing he did was get up, and he ran over to the lion's den, and he cried out, and he said, Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God whom you serve continually been able to deliver you from the lions? Then Daniel said to the king, O king, live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the lion's mouth so that they have not hurt me, because I was found innocent before him. And also, O king, I have done nothing wrong before you. The haters rose up against Daniel. The same haters that rose up against Daniel ended up being thrown into the lion's den because King Darius, he became privy to what they were doing. They tried to alter the law to get rid of Daniel. And, God will remove those type of people. The same ones that came up against you, he will remove them. And when they try to poke at you, sometimes they will receive the same punishment that they were seeking for you. That person that's trying to get you fired at your job end up getting fired. Okay? So don't play about God, because he will not play about you. So I want us to look at all of those challenges. Look at what I went through. Courage versus adversity. Courage versus haters. And each and every time when you have courage in God and your beliefs, you will always stand firm. You will always be a winner. There's no competition. So what season are you in? What are you facing that is making you feel discouraged? What is causing you to hide your courage? What is causing you to silence your voice? I'm here to encourage you. Do not be discouraged at what comes, but be encouraged by the opposition. Be encouraged when people start to hate on you for no reason. Be encouraged when you have been tested and tested and tested. Be glad and rejoice through the adversity, because Jesus will shut the lion's mouth for you. Jesus will stand in the fire with you. Your life may feel like it's on fire, but the fire will not burn you. Isaiah 54:17 says, no weapon formed against you will prosper. Hold on to that. I invite you to call on Jesus. Jesus will send his warrior angels to battle for you. If they knock, Jesus will buck for you. Again and again and again, Jesus will equip you with everything you need. But go to him first. Have courage. Have courage. Go to him first. Don't look at the circumstance. Have courage to just stand firm in your beliefs, no matter where that you feel like it's going to lead you. Have courage. So thank you all for listening in today. I pray that you're filled. I pray that if you are in a season where you need strength, you need a overpour of courage, I pray that in this moment you receive that. I pray that he just fills you and he gives you the encouragement and the nourishment that you need to just push forward. We are in this. We are in a spiritual battle each and every day, and we need your courage. So if you enjoyed this video, feel free to share it. We don't gatekeep over here. Send it to a friend, subscribe, do what you do. I'm happy that you're listening in, and I'm happy that you're taking this vulnerable journey with me. So have a great week. Until next time, peace.